What's up, gamers? It's Papa Jumpluff. Today we're here with Green Eggs and Sam, and he's gonna give us a deck tech for his frogs list for WOTC 20.
It's been a long time coming. I put this deck together back when I was first introduced to the format. I wanted to make an old card that I had work, and it turns out that he had a lot more frog legs than I thought. So I'll get the easy stuff out of the way first for Pokemon. We're playing a playset of Cleffa. It is incorrect to play less than 4 in any deck. I will maintain that position, die on that hill. But I'm waiting to be proven wrong on that front. I think it'll be very cool once that happens. In addition to those, we also play a single copy of Magby and Pichu. They're pretty good against ability-based decks. Frogs being stage 2 kind of just dies to Aerodactyl if your opponent can get it set up on turn 1. So having ways to nullify that goes really well, and also Bats decks tend to be really good in this format. So having Pichu as a way to spread damage and also randomly interact with other ability-based decks is really good. Onto the main line for the deck, the namesake, we have 3 Poliwags, 3 Poliwhirls, both from Neo Discovery, 3 Politoeds, and a single base set Poliwrath. These are the core of the deck, the reason why it functions the way it does. Sorry about that. Poliwag, nothing special. I just personally really like the artwork, and it's a basic Poliwag that isn't weak to lightning, which I think is important. Even though it doesn't have 50 HP, this is just what I stick with generally. Poliwhirl is the evolution that I use here. It's not as high HP as I think one of the e-reader versions, but I like this one for the utility of its first attack, Belly Drum. It's pretty unique as far as the format goes. It's 1 colorless, you put 3 damage counters on Poliwhirl, and you can find 2 basics from your deck, 2 basic energies from your deck and attach them to it, which means that it can accelerate pretty quickly, especially if you're in a position where Poliwhirl won't be readily KO'd by your opponent's next move. But you're trying to, from here, accelerate to Politoed, the biggest attacker in the deck. He's got all the right numbers in all the right places. Between being a stage 2 with 110 HP, only a 2 retreat cost, and a whopping 3 different attacks, all of which are very good in their own right. So I'll just walk through those right now real quick. Sudden Growth, 1 colorless. You can put as many basic energies from your hand onto Politoed as you want, it's like a miniature rain dance in a sense, but it's really good if you're behind and if you synergize with a few cards that we'll go over later. Just a solid incidental attack to have. Second one is Frog Hop for 1 water and 2 colorless. Deals 30 damage guaranteed, and you flip to deal 24. Averaging 40 damage is pretty solid in this format. That's just a great rate. And the biggest attack that he has, and the most important attack he has, is Energy Splash. For 2 water and 3 colorless, deals a guaranteed 70 damage at the cost of having to kick 2 water energies on Politoed to Pokemon on your bench in any way you like. So you can't deal 70 damage too consistently in your deck, but thanks to strategies and cards we'll go over later, that isn't as much of a downside as you might think, and in some cases is actually a very, very good upside. So Politoed, very consistent attacker in this deck. It'll be taking a lot of the prizes that you want, and it has a load of survivability. Again, thanks to the relatively cheap retreat cost, really high HP, and it's easy to get him attacking despite the high attack costs, just because there's so much colorless in those attack costs. DCE is a really, really powerful card in this deck. And then I also have a single copy of base set Poliwrath because of his last attack, Whirlpool. For 2 water, 2 colorless, you deal 40 damage guaranteed and discard an energy card. That's just a very solid right. Hyper Beam attacks are just randomly usable in this format, and steel decks tend to be one of the few that consistently can put up a fight against frogs. So I like having this as a one-of tech to sort of ramp into. Supporting the Frogs line, we have some Eevee cards and Eeveelutions. 2 of this promo that likes to evolve whenever, I don't know, a ham sandwich comes into play, I don't know. And these evolve primarily into Espeon and situationally into Flareon. I had to think of the word for a second there. Espeon is very, very important to this deck's strategy. Her ability allows you to bounce any energy on your field back to your hand as often as you like during your turn, which is important for 2 specific things in this deck. 1, it allows you to kick all the energy on your bench that is
put there from POLITOED back into your hand. Notably, you can just use POLITOED's first attack, Sudden Growth, to put them all back on him again. So if you've kicked 6 energies to the bench, you can suck them all back up and slap 6 back down immediately. And that is extremely powerful. The energy mobility in this deck is one of the big reasons why it functions the way that it does. And the other reason, which I'm gonna spoil an energy early on, is Warp Energy. If you can play a Warp Energy to swap something out of the active spot and then immediately bounce it back with Espeon, you essentially present yourself with a situation where you have free retreats for the entire game, no questions asked, and you're functionally immune to most special conditions, which is extremely good for a package that only requires realistically 5 or 6 slots in the deck. It's part of the reason why POLITOED has as much energy mobility as it has, and I don't know if we've discussed it on the channel yet, but energy mobility, the ability to manipulate things on the field and how they are able to attack, is one of the most powerful mechanics, more than card advantage, I would argue, but people can always discuss that. Then in addition to that, we have a single Flareon in here, just because again, it's a single card tech, and it's a fire type that can attack for a solid amount using colorless energy. It is there to eat a big chunk out of a Sizor's HP pool, or any other steel type for that matter.
In addition to that, there is one more Pokemon that I would like to discuss. It's the secret haymaker of the deck,
And it is Shining Raichu. The attack itself isn't great enough to support in most decks. Attaching 1 energy a turn is usually not very efficient, especially when you're on a 70 HP Pokemon that can't do much else otherwise. But thanks to POLITOED's attack, like we mentioned earlier, you can actually kick energies to Shining Raichu over the course of a couple turns to sort of power it up and make sure that it can come in after POLITOED's finished attacking and just deal some massive damage. A key synergy here, synergy kind of being the operative term, is with Rainbow energies. POLITOED forces you to kick 2 water energies. Rainbow counts as a water energy in that instance, and then it can count as the lightning cost for Shining Raichu. In addition to that, it also qualifies as a water energy for Shining Raichu's attack once it resolves, so you can use it as an electric energy and then add 10 to the damage on it. Speaking of, the attack deals a guaranteed 40 to your opponent's active slot, and then you can snipe one thing on your opponent's bench for 10 damage times the number of water energies attached to Shining Raichu, which is really, really good. It means that in a situation where you have 2 rainbows and 2 water energies on Shining Raichu, you can deal 40 to your opponent's active Pokemon, and then 40 to something on the bench. Very important for picking off babies or finishing off something that retreated on an earlier turn. And this doesn't have a cap like most Water Gun or Hydro Pump attacks. You can attach 7 water energies if you really want to, and just start nuking things on the bench however you want. It's also very good with Gust of Wind effects. You can gust up a benched Pokemon if your opponent has a baby in the active slot, and then do some weird stuff like that. I know that Sizor really likes to do that combo with like snatch effects and plus powers and whatnot. All in all, it's a very quirky Pokemon. It's not playable in too many other decks except for Shining Kings, which I think we've seen on the channel before at some point. And it's just a really nice thing to have. I used to have Miracle Energy in this deck, but it's a little situational for my tastes. Aside from those, the trainer base is pretty standard. We have, you know, Gust of Winds, fan clubs, removals, item finders, computer search, Professor Oak, and town volunteers as like the core of the deck. I think most of these are pretty standard for stage 2 lists. And then in addition to these, we also have a Pokemon Trader, a single Desert Shaman just for utility, some gold berries for healing, 2 stadiums. I'm always swapping around copies of these. They're both very good for the deck, but I have to sort of fiddle with the numbers a bit because energy regrowth is really good and healing is also pretty good when your main attacker has 110 HP. Then in addition to that, there's a single Fisherman, both for flavor purposes because there's a POLITOED in the artwork, and also for burst potential. If you can get 4 water energies from your discard pile and use Sudden Growth from POLITOED, you just slap 4 energies on it immediately out of nowhere, and that can definitely end games. It definitely has ended games in my experience.
Okay. I would have forced the deck on you if it was like that was the issue.
Got the rainbow there.
Oh, yep, that's right. There's one more.
What do you have?
So, energies, I sort of explained a lot of them already, but we have 2 warp energies, again for the synergies with Espeon, 4 DCE, one of the best cards in the format, gotta play 4 of those. 4 rainbow energies, a single electric, or lightning energy, I always mix the 2 up, and a bunch of waters. Pretty straightforward. Nothing quirky here outside of the synergies that we've already discussed. And that's it. The deck is really, really strong. It sort of came out the gate like that. It doesn't have too many bad matchups, although they're based on last week. There might be a cool one with Fortress. I'm not entirely sure yet, but otherwise very solid, very consistent, a lot of fun because of how much flexibility and maneuverability the deck has.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on the channel today.
Glad to be here.
All right.